And Dr. Peter McCullough has been fighting in the information war unlike anybody else in the whole COVID emergency. That the establishment has wanted to be a permanent emergency. And there have been so many big developments on the mortality rates from the shots around the world, on the cover-ups with Fauci, and now Senator Paul filing a criminal complaint referral to the Justice Department. But also, about a week and a half ago, Dr. McCullough, who did visit with Jamie Foxx, who was concerned about the shots. Turns out he was upset from other witnesses from the first shot he took, reportedly took more. Now he won't talk about what happened to him. You have LeBron James's son, Bronny, never will play basketball again professionally. He was set to be a number 1 NBA draft pick down the road and has a heart attack. His heart stops. That just disappears. LeBron said he got himself and his family to take the shots. There is so much to cover with Dr. Peter McCullough, onlinehealthnow.com, and on Twitter, P_McCullough MD. Doc, there's so much to hit first. Let's get the LeBron James's son, Bronny, out of the way, and the Jamie Foxx, because I know you don't want to attack Jamie, neither do I, but you said he's not being honest. Now, he didn't officially come to you as a doctor, but he did want to talk to you. You did talk to him. You respectfully did not say back when he was really sick and still looks terrible what he specifically said, but now you've said he's not being entirely honest. So I think with these big public figures, Stalin said 1 man dies, it's a tragedy, 10,000 dies, it's a statistic. Well, 1 celebrity gets sick from a shot, that could really wake people up if they were to speak out. We see Ice Cube saying he refuses to take it. He has friends and family got sick from it. Elon Musk has friends and family, like his brother, got deathly ill from it. So there's a lot of casualties, both living and dead, from this. And so the system's really having a problem trying to give us collective amnesia. And thank God you're still fighting harder than ever. So thank you for joining us, sir.
Well, thanks for having me.
So let's tackle Bronny James and Jamie Foxx.
Well, let's take Bronny James. Here's the context, Alex. Nick Uichuchu was on the U.S. team last year, has a cardiac arrest. USC Trojans basketball, he's resuscitated, and he gets an ICD. Presumably, he's gotten a subcuticular ICD, the same type of ICD that pilot Bob Snow of American Airlines received. I recently met with Bob Snow. He showed me his ICD. The newer ICDs, Alex, they don't go into the blood system. They don't go inside the heart. They actually sit outside the chest wall. So theoretically, athletes like Nick can come back and play for the USC Trojans, okay? Now, with the USC Trojans already having 1 cardiac arrest, we hear that Bronny James, son of famed basketball player LeBron James, has had a cardiac arrest, although we didn't hear details of
and not to interrupt, but just to be clear, that's 2 in 1 year at the same school.
Right, 2 in 1 year at the same school. Now, listen, USC has a vaccine mandate for students. Bronny James had gone to a private high school, which had very strict vaccine mandates, no exceptions. LeBron says he's done his research and he and his family took the vaccine. So we're nearly certain Bronny's taken the vaccine. He's had a purported cardiac arrest, but there's no report of defibrillation or intubation. He's in and out of the ICU in a few hours and home the next day. So I don't think Bronny James had a full cardiac arrest. He probably had a near miss, Alex. But this is not looking good. I can tell you there's a paper out in circulation. It's on social media today. It's going wild. First author is YOU, published in Circulation, our best cardiology journal. And get this, Alex, 58% of these kids who have myocarditis, a year later, the heart is still damaged. It still has a scar in it. And what we're thinking now is some of these kids that are taking heart damage, about half of it feel the heart damage, half of them don't. There are people walking around who are at risk for cardiac arrest.
So let's slow down. Give us the study. I'm sure it's on your Twitter. We'll pull it up. What is this particular study? Let's talk about that. And then we're not top cardiologists like you. Walk us through it like we're 5 years old and explain why it's the athletes, what the heart scarring does, and why it's such an issue.
Alex, you and your audience are pretty far ahead on this. I have to give you a lot of credit. In cardiology, how we assess myocarditis or vaccine heart inflammation is by measuring blood test, EKG, echocardiography, and cardiac MRI. Now, the cardiac MRI is critical because the contrast that we use called gadolinium, it can actually tag in the areas where the heart is damaged. It's called late gadolinium enhancement. And what you and colleagues showed in this paper in Circulation, I think I've retweeted it from some others. If you can follow up just my Twitter feed, I've retweeted this.
Is that the correct study, sir?
No. This is one that's related. This is one that I'm an author on about the fatal cases. But what you and colleagues showed in Circulation, Alex, is that at baseline, the MRIs show myocarditis. We were hoping it was going to heal. These are all young kids. And what we're finding out in the U study, 58% of them a year later still have ongoing damage. We don't know if it's a permanent scar or not, but it's the area of damage or a nascent scar that is the site of which the abnormal heart rhythm forms, and that's what causes a cardiac arrest.
Wow. And you know, the national media a few weeks ago, this happened to Bronny, just picked up on my lay, terms that aren't inaccurate, but are just a common person's talking about this on air's view. And I'd gone off what you'd said and others said, that with regular, problems like this, and I always mispronounce it, myocarditis, that within 5 to 10 years, a lot of people die. The statistics vary. And I was simply saying, imagine how many people are walking around with these damaged hearts with the scarring that don't know it. I'm a layperson, but you just kind of repeated that with a lot of gravitas. Can you explain that to us?
The best predictor that the heart is okay and there's not going to be a cardiac arrest is a stone cold normal MRI. This is very important. So I had a young kid see me this week. He came from up north. He's going to university. He's had some chest pain. He's taken the vaccines. Alex, this kid looked at me in the eyes, deadpan, and he asked me, Dr. McCullough, am I going to have a cardiac arrest? So whether these young kids are saying it openly or not, they are all scared to death now because they're seeing so many people having cardiac arrest. So what I'm doing in practice is I'm doing a battery of blood tests, EKG, echocardiogram, and cardiac MRI, and I'm trying to put it all together. But Alex, I have to tell you, the most worrisome case is the case of Oscar Cabrera Adames. I don't know if you know about this case, but he's a European basketball player. See if your team can pull him up. Adames, Adames. He has a cardiac arrest in 2021 on the basketball court, and he tweets that he has COVID vaccine myocarditis. He's got the problem, so he's honest. And then in 2023, he's hopefully recovering. He gets on the treadmill to kind of readiness to recover to the league, Alex, and he dies on the treadmill. They can't resuscitate him. I'm a cardiologist. I've done treadmills for decades. I've never had a patient die on the treadmill, never. So I'm telling you, this vaccine myocarditis is serious, and we really need to, go after this with a full front of research, risk stratification, risk mitigation. The shots need to stop, and all the athletes, I think, need to be called in for an evaluation.
We're going to go to break and come back and talk more about this. Also, the Jamie Foxx situation, why you're saying he's not being honest, and more. Dr. Peter McCullough, stay with us. All right, we are back live, and we did get the study he's talking about, cardiovascular assessment up to 1 year after COVID-19 vaccine-associated myocarditis. This is a big, big story, very respected. Here you see it posted at the NIH.gov. Start over how big a deal this is, and in layman terms, explain it to us.
This paper is a very big deal, Alex. You know, when the FDA announced the vaccines cause myocarditis in June of 2021, the FDA said that the myocarditis is mild, it is not serious, and it's transient. And nothing can be further from the truth. This bombshell paper describes that when the follow-up MRI is done at a year, that 58% of the time, these kids still have ongoing heart damage or scar formation. It's consistent with a paper from Yale published just a few months earlier, where they came up with 80% of the MRIs are still abnormal at 9 months. And then in the U paper, they point out the other consistencies with the established papers. This myocarditis is serious. It's long lasting. It's not going away. And I have a senior author paper under review at the same journal, Circulation, indicating that in some cases, the myocarditis is fatal. And I think it's the cause of these cardiac arrests that we're seeing in athletes and other public figures, young people all over the world.
What do you make of the spin we're seeing everywhere? Even as COVID rolled out, it was like, it's normal for kids to have heart attacks now on billboards and TV and the sides of buses, and then with unauthorized drug pitching it on Sesame Street. Now they're saying, oh, everybody's having heart attacks and myocarditis from COVID. But then the statistics are showing us it's the so-called vaccinated.
Remember in 2020, there were no vaccines. So there was an opportunity to evaluate myocarditis, and it was. The NCAA Big Ten, they did MRIs and blood tests and all these athletes. They came up with a handful of potential cases, and there were no hospitalizations and deaths. There was a paper by Singer using ICD codes. Again, myocarditis was very, very rare. 2 potential hospitalizations, no deaths. The U.S. military had a program. They dropped it in 2020, couldn't find any cases. And then an Israeli paper by Tuvali and colleagues showed that with COVID, rare cases of myocarditis weren't any more frequent than the background rate. So COVID infection does not cause frequent or serious myocarditis. That's a false narrative. The vaccines are the problem. They are the culprit. We can't blame COVID in 2020 for these cardiac arrests we're seeing now. The next cardiac arrest that occurs, Alex, the first question I ask is, what vaccines did they take and when did they take them? My concern now is we're seeing cases of cardiac arrest that are probably a year or 2 after they've taken the shots.
And that's backed up by this prestigious study saying that's what they're seeing with these lesions. What is causing the lesions if it's connected to these shots?
It turns out that the messenger RNA is not broken down readily in the body, and it keeps recirculating and recirculating. The athletes draw more and more blood into the heart with each practice session, with each game. And so the heart is getting progressively loaded with messenger RNA, which is installing the genetic code for the lethal Wuhan spike protein, that protein that was engineered in the Chinese biosecurity lab. That protein is very unnatural. It can't be broken down by human enzymes. It directly damages heart muscle cells. It draws white blood cells and inflammatory factors into the heart. That begins to cause inflammation and swelling, damage early scar formation. And then the electricity does not conduct normally through that zone. That's what triggers a cardiac arrest. And you know what's actually the trigger in the end is a surge of adrenaline. So the 2 time points we're seeing young people die is during sports, during a sprint or just after a play, and then also during sleep, because between 3 a.m. and 6 a.m., there's a surge of adrenaline in the normal waking cycle. So if you hear about a young person who dies in their sleep, perfectly healthy, someone, a healthy young person, athlete dying, the very first thing you should think of is it fatal? COVID-19 vaccine-induced myocarditis.
Incredible. So in the first year of COVID, no upticks in myocarditis or any of this. The shot started explodes. So when the media literally puts out the disinfo with no evidence, they just say it might be COVID. It's Boulder Dash.
It is. I think it's actually a form of a cover-up. It's an institutionalized cover-up. The American College of Cardiology, in their fall of 2022 document, they falsely allege that COVID causes more myocarditis than the vaccine. So therefore, we should give the vaccines and cause more myocarditis. It's the most ludicrous recommendations that I wrote. Every person on the committee, I have a Substack coming out on this, where I call them out and say, listen, I'm a senior person in the college, and I know you guys. Now we've got fatal cases in cardiac arrest. You better reevaluate that statement pretty quickly. I CC'd even the president of the society. And you know what, Alex? It's been 2 weeks. No response.
So let me ask you this question. They are obviously not stupid. Dr. Michael Yeadon, before they even started the shots, the former vice president of Pfizer, predicted what would happen. You issued warnings. But then we have the FDA document in October of 2000 predicting myocarditis and everything that happened. So how did you know? How did Yeadon know? How did they know? And why would then the FDA put this out and then still roll out the shots? I mean, they can't come after you, come after your license, do all this crap when you're actually going off their own warning.
You're right. Now, I was slightly ahead of this. I published an op-ed in The Hill. You can still find it in the website, in The Hill, which is a widely read journal for the House, the Senate, and the White House. And that was in August of 2020. And the title of the paper was The Great Gamble of the COVID-19 Vaccine Development Program. I was the only public figure in the world to put it in writing that these vaccines were a medical gamble. And boy, was I right. 2 months later, you showed the slide. The FDA, in that October 22nd, 2020 meeting, the FDA said we expect myocarditis, blood clots, Guillain-Barré syndrome. They called it ahead of time. And all the medical societies, instead of being neutral, the medical societies were openly supporting vaccines. They had no equipoise there. The American
And is that
Board of
because the
Internal
regulatory leaders have been captured in the revolving door?
Yeah, it's absolutely. The regulatory leaders have been captured. The money had flowed. Do you know Pfizer came out December 10th of 2020, and on December 17th of 2020, the American Board of Internal Medicine, which holds my certifications and all the specialists in the country, on December 17th, they told us all to go out and get vaccinated, take selfies of ourselves and our vaccine card, and show it to our patients. How did they know it was safe 7 days after it was released, especially when the FDA said in October of 2020 it was going to cause those complications? You can tell all the societies, they knew ahead of time this was dangerous, and they were going to force it anyway.
There you are, warning, really before ahead of anybody of this, right there. And again,
that's right. I'm the only person who made the call. And, Scott Atlas was in the White House at the time. Scott was publishing in The Hill as well. We were emailing. Scott never brought that forward to the president. He met with the president every day. And unfortunately, Trump, Scott Atlas, Brett Giroir, Deborah Birx, they met for months. And according to Atlas in his book, they only focused on masks, lockdowns, and waiting for a vaccine.
Wow, stay right there. Stay right there, doctor. I want listeners to listen to me very carefully. The left instills victimology in their people to be losers they can control that aren't upwardly mobile. That's negative and bad. But there's an extreme with populist conservatives, Christians, and just good, hardworking people. We have a survival mechanism that God gave us evolutionarily to where we get attacked and hurt and we just kind of forget about it and move on and just try to overcome it. And so people are like, hey, the COVID thing's over. Let's move forward. We got other things to deal with. No, they're gearing up with the UN World Treaty. They say new viruses are coming. They want masks back on. They want new lockdowns. They're not going to give up. We have to work even harder. This is their main program, is this virus disease X thing to take over. And they're building all these camps and all the rest of it. This is the jewel in their crown of control. Of all the Hydra heads, this is the biggest and the meanest. And we have to prosecute them, not just for the victims. They're important, but they're dead and dying and sick, and we're sad for them. But this is about taking over society. It's about the children and the whole shooting match here. So when Senator Paul does criminal referrals to the Justice Department on Fauci for gain of function and lying, it's life and death. We'll get to that in a moment. But I just want you to understand that we have to put this front and center. Front and center. I'm the same way. I want to just move on. That's what I do. I don't, you don't move on this because you're in a ring with a gladiator and they just hacked off one of our arms. We just stabbed them in the guts. They're bleeding to death, but they're still going to try to take us with them. And I use that as a metaphor. So here we are. Dr. Peter McCullough just laid out mega bombshells, prestigious reports confirming major heart damage in these people that have been given the shots, that it didn't come before the shots from COVID. It's all a lie. We already know that, but now it's confirmed, and we have to prosecute these people. We have to first convict them in the court of public opinion. You said something during the break that's so critical. We'll hit this Winstrop House Oversight Committee report and then get into Fauci and then get into Jamie Foxx and the rest of it. But you said, I said, are we winning, doctor? You said, hell yeah, we are. We said, not in those words, you bet we are. This is a one-way street. So explain that first. So we've got the initiative, but we better use it. Explain what that means.
I showed you that op-ed I published about the Great Gamble. It was obvious I was questioning the vaccine agenda before the vaccines came out. Now we see a one-way street, one by one, doctors, other professionals, people of all walks of life are basically waking up to the realization these vaccines weren't safe and effective. And in fact, the government agencies all over the world did not have people's best interest in mind in advancing these vaccines. To this day, Alex, our government is pushing these vaccines. Medical societies are pushing the vaccines. If someone's following the narrative, Alex, they're on their 7th shot. Do you know anybody who's taken 7 shots?
No.
I don't either. I mean, nobody's come out and said they've taken 7 shots. No one can figure out why these are still on the market and being advanced. And boy, that House Select Committee report by Chairman Brad Wenstrup, a representative from Ohio, I think it was in itself really dropped the evidence on what was going on early in January of 2020 regarding
let's talk about that. I've got the Wenstrup releases alarming new report on proximal origin, authors NIH suppression of COVID-19 lab leak hypothesis.
This is what was going on. Scientists started calling Anthony Fauci all over the world. They said, hey, listen, this virus came out of the lab in Wuhan, China. So Fauci and his boss, Francis Collins, called a conference call. Prominent people, Christian Anderson from Scripps, Edwin Holmes from University of Sydney, Jeremy Farrar from the Wellcome Trust, Peter Daszak from the EcoHealth Alliance, who was very involved in the creation of SARS-CoV-2. They have a conference call, and apparently Fauci convinces everybody to lie. And the lie was the vaccines came out of nature, a fish market, or they were naturally occurring.
And now we have their emails that they knew that was a lie, but they got together in a conspiracy to cover up the origin.
In fact, the origin was nailed down in publications by Ralph Baric in 2015, Nature Medicine and Proceedings of the National Academy of Science. And in fact, one of the scientists was emailing Holmes, and he says, F, Eddie, how are we going to cover this up? So these guys knew they were involved in a cover-up. So they conspired to conceal a national security threat, a public health threat to the entire world. And so this deception that went on caused harm. If they would have come out and said, listen, this came out of the lab, this was a U.S. designed, created project that was outsourced to the Chinese via the EcoHealth Alliance, we could have been on it sooner. The scientific community could have been on it sooner, but instead they deceived us intentionally. And looks like Fauci's at the center of the deception. Christian Anderson published the first of what was 12 fraudulent papers in the peer-reviewed literature saying that there was a natural origin.
And then they covered up the therapeutics, told people to go home to get a higher death rate, got paid $50,000+ to put them on ventilators, and it was a unified program in every Western country showing total premeditation, as Dr. Michael Yeadon says.
It's true. He had it right, and it's coming out in these reports. There are some inside analyses that even this report is heavily redacted, that it's way worse than what's in the Wenstrup report.
So let's talk about the criminal referral of Rand Paul for Dr. Fauci.
So what this has done now is, because the Ralph Baric papers in 2015 say that Fauci and the National Allergy Immunology Branch funded the gain-of-function research. It says right in the Barrick's papers that this is gain-of-function research. It was grandfathered in because it started before the ban on gain-of-function, and it was outsourced to the Wuhan Institute of Virology. What Rand Paul is saying is, listen, when Fauci was called before the House and the Senate, he said that it was not gain-of-function, and it clearly was. It was violating the U.S. ban, and because Fauci lied to Congress, that he now has committed a crime. And the crimes, as we sit here today, are fraud, as well as, I think, what will ultimately be determined to be mass negligent homicide, people who died of the virus that they shouldn't have, and people have died after the vaccine. So Rand Paul is calling for formal criminal charges and prosecution of Anthony Fauci.
Which in and of itself is a big victory. You're a smart guy. You like to go off what's currently happening, but we've had private conversations years ago, and they turned out what you said was accurate. Now you're saying more of it publicly, but looking into your crystal ball or into your radar scope is a more modern analogy. We see the propaganda. We see them saying a new virus is coming. We see the UN treaty. I think it's overwhelmingly clear they're planning something new. What is your view on that, and what can we do to stop them? Because again, it's not about vindictiveness or even the victims deserve justice. That's important. But for me, it's all about the future and my 4 children. And I mean, I'm very selfish. People say, why do you fight so hard? I mean, these people are going to release bioweapons. They're going to kill more of my family. I lost family. I feel actually at a primitive level like a coward that I haven't gone out and done something physical, but I realize that's how we'll lose. We need to push the whole thing, convict them in the public and get them all, try them, and then punish them. But at a fundamental genetic cellular level, I can feel the threat. I see the threat, and I want to know, what do I do to stop their next attack?
The first thing we have to do is get ahead of every story. And I think we did that successfully in the monkeypox scare. Remember that the WHO declared a monkeypox emergency. President Biden declared a monkeypox emergency. You and I, Alex, were way ahead of this. We were telling America correctly that it was a sexually transmitted spread pattern, that generally the general public was not at risk. We didn't have to rush out and get vaccines. And then with no fanfare, no press release, finally Biden drops the monkeypox emergency declaration in January of 31 of 2023. So monkeypox is gone. We've had now a malaria scare. Oh, that the malaria cases. Well, we always have some malaria in the United States. I've seen it my entire career. It's always a question where it comes from. But then right after a malaria scare news report, then a New Zealand company announces that they have a messenger RNA vaccine for malaria. And now we've heard scares regarding leprosy,
Marburg,
tuberculosis.
Well, continue.
And so with each one of these disease scare reports, look for a declaration that there's a vaccine. So it's scare, vaccine, scare, vaccine. And we can't have the public fall for this. One that's really playing out, Alex, is respiratory syncytial virus. Now, this is a mild viral syndrome that little children can have. Most of the cases are under age 1. We treat it with a nebulizer, sometimes some budesonide. It's simply not a big deal for normal kids. Do you know that they've had a rushed approval of a respiratory syncytial virus vaccine for pregnant women?
Oh, I'm already seeing TV ads and billboards saying the name of the virus and saying, get your shots. So they're just using it as, get your shots, be protected from this. As if those shots even do anything.
Right. So respiratory syncytial virus, a vaccine for pregnant women, children, and adults that's largely not needed. And now monoclonal antibodies. Listen to this, Alex. What they're proposing is, and this is the CDC ACIP panel, they're proposing that every child born during RSV season get an injection of monoclonal antibodies against RSV on the day of birth. Let me tell you what, normal children just need to adapt to, life outside the womb and the mother.
But don't newborns already have a really powerful built-in immune system?
They do, and this is completely unnecessary. It's not medically necessary. It's not clinically indicated.
Why do babies, because I'm not a doctor like you, I just read about it, such an incredible immune, for 3 to 6 months? What is that?
Sure, they have an immune system, and it's bolstered by antibodies in the breast milk called colostrum. And so children don't need any of these shots early. Hepatitis B shot is a complete overkill. It's only needed in IV drug-abusing mothers and those with active hepatitis B. Respiratory syncytial virus monoclonal antibodies and vaccines would probably only be needed in kids with lung disease like cystic fibrosis. We need to use risk stratification and not blanket the entire
Sure. Only if a mother is an intravenous drug addict or crackhead will we even look at this stuff then.
Right, for hepatitis B, that's right, and probably only a child with cystic fibrosis or otherwise have lung disease for the respiratory syncytial virus. We're doing overkill by trying to inject everybody, and it's a big gravy train for these companies if every single human being born takes all these injections.
All right, we got about 10 minutes left, and there's so much to hit. I know Jamie Foxx sought you out. You had a private conversation. It wasn't as an official doctor. You were very nice and didn't say what he said, but that it was about the vaccine. You said a week and a half ago on the national news, for folks that missed it, you basically said he's not being entirely honest. I'm not mad at him. I'm not mad at LeBron James. But, this whole thing of, Del Mar, all of them, this stuff happens and then they clam up. Obviously, they're being approached. They're being told. When you said that, can you elaborate or why you're saying Jamie's not being entirely honest?
All right, well, let me tell you, in 2021, I met Jamie Foxx. We talked, we took pictures, and, he knew the risks of these vaccines. And what Hollywood reporter AJ Benza, who's apparently close to people involved, says, Benza says that Jamie was essentially forced to take a shot to be on a movie set, and then he suffered a stroke. Now, Jamie is not heard from for months. Then he comes out and makes his own video. And he says that, he's had a very severe illness. He's had tubes in him, presumably an endotracheal tube and a feeding tube. He's obviously lost a tremendous amount of weight. His left side of his face has changed, looks partially paralyzed. I can tell you as a doctor, he looks like he's had a stroke. And any type of stroke where you have a feeding tube and endotracheal tube is a very serious stroke. So what's the end conclusion? He's probably had a vaccine-induced stroke. What Jamie's not doing, he's not coming out and being honest with the public and simply telling us what happened. And the reason why he should be honest is because he can favorably help other people. If he warns other people, it's going to have a big influence. He has a big following. The same is true for Damar Hamlin, for Bronny James, for all of these individuals. Justin Bieber, look at Justin Bieber. His face is frozen. He's missed 2 years of concerts. He has Ramsay Hunt syndrome, the same syndrome that actually Nancy Pelosi has. These are signature vaccine injury syndromes.
Sure, and how many hundreds of athletes have dropped dead? I mean, it's usually one dies a year. It's top news. It's just every day. I think about Ernest Ramirez. He believed the social contract was there. He believed it would protect him and his son, and they would help others. They went out and got the Pfizer shot. He was okay. His son died 4 days later. He was a sports guy, went to play basketball, fell down dead, 14 years old. He didn't cower and shut up. He went out and has saved probably millions of lives, potentially, on the talk circuit. I'm just asking them, be like Ernest Ramirez. Speak up so that the death, and I don't blame Ernest. He believed the system. He believed he believed he was being lied. He believed the medical system that we now know is captured to a great extent. And we need to be more like Ernest Ramirez Sr., not just letting his son die in vain, but save a lot of lives in the process.
That's right. And, another family doing this is the Phillips family. Their son, Sean Phillips, hockey player up in Canada, dies about a month after the shot. I've been asked to be an expert in that case. I've looked at the data. I can tell you, I've looked at the autopsy report of Ernest Ramirez. The parents are right. The vaccine is the cause of death in these young people, and the autopsy shows it.
Well, it's just amazing when we look at that photo of Ernest Ramirez there. And, you've given us so many big guests. You've recommended other guests we should have on. You told me about a guy, a man that worked in the Bill and Melinda Gates Foundation that's going to be coming to town to be on Del Bigtree's Highwire show. So send us any big guests you think we should have on. Tell us about that individual.
Yeah, why don't you bring him up? Gert Vandenbosch. He's formerly Gates Foundation. He's a veterinarian by training, just like Albert Bourla. But he trained and he worked at the Gates Foundation, other big pharmaceutical companies. And what Vandenbosch said is he said it is going to be a disaster if we vaccinate the entire world for this problem. Because anytime you vaccinate the entire world, there he is, Gert Vandenbosch. You know what he said? He said that all you're going to do is make the virus more and more resistant to these vaccines, and the virus is going to hang around forever. And Alex, that's exactly what's happened. If we didn't vaccinate the entire world, this thing should have burned out by now. I mean, come on, it's still out there.
You said that 3 years ago, and it was proven true, which they know is common sense virology. I'm not a virologist, and I know that. An epidemiologist, all those terms. Who else should we interview? Because we're going to get him on. Who else should we talk to?
I got to tell you, I think there's some terrific people who are doing great work. Probably one of the people who's keeping the best track of athletes, Alex, John Stockton. Remember, he was a guard for the Utah Jazz, superstar. He's keeping track of every U.S. athlete, high school, college, and pro. Bring him on. And, bring him on with Michelle Tafoya. Remember Michelle? She was on Monday Night Football. They appear frequently together. She took the shot, and now she's lost her job with the NFL. She's not supporting the vaccines. So I can tell you, we need to hear more about these athletes. I think these public figures are very important to come forward and to disclose what's happened. We need to hear it. The people have heard from you and me, Alex. I'm a doctor. I'm trying to do the best I can. But we need to hear from other public figures who are willing to come out and tell the truth.
Well, absolutely. And something important to note is they're not just gearing up with this UN treaty that takes over our bodies and our health care that Biden's former task force heads up at the UN. They're still trying to make us take shots to go to Europe. They're trying to make people take shots to come here, though they claim they backed off. They're still trying to make people that work at hospitals take them. They're still trying to make you take them to go to private schools or college. They've not stopped all this bullying at the airlines everywhere. This is ongoing.
It's true. There's a Twitter account, No College Mandates. A woman named Lucia runs it. There's still 100 colleges that are mandating these shots. In the state of Massachusetts, a few days ago, they introduced a bill that would force both the flu shot and the COVID shot on kids if they wanted to attend school in Massachusetts. It's still going on. What I want the parents to know is that the COVID-19 vaccines are not safe, not effective, and they cause permanent damage and problems. Last night, I was at a meeting in Dallas, Alex, and I gave a lecture. A man came up to me, told me about his nephew. His nephew was at Indiana University, was forced to take the shot and develop blood clots, shot to his lungs, blood clots in his brain. Now the kid is absolutely destroyed. His aspirations of going to college are gone. Parents need to prioritize their kids' health. The kids need to wake up and understand these vaccines are an imminent threat to their health and survival.
It's the beginning, the leading edge of the depopulation agenda to see if they can get away with it. It's a beta test. Imagine what the real attack would look like. In closing, because I get this question on the street and on air more than any other question, and it's, what do we do if we haven't had the shots or we have had the shots to get the spike protein out? I've had Dr. Mikovits on. She said, hey, I love your nitric boost formula. It has a bunch of compounds that are known to clean up the blood and things. I know I'm working with you guys and all the doctors and scientists you have and the online pharmacy and more at onlinehealthnow.com. And that takes you guys to the wellness company that you're the chief science officer of, onlinehealthnow.com. It is so important for people to realize, whether you've had the shot or not, with the things going on in our environment, the things that are happening, there are things God gave us through Mother Nature that help us overall be a lot healthier. So I know we don't have a holy grail yet, but from the research, what should people be looking for to try to make sure that their cardiovascular system is healthier?
We have a major paper coming out, fully accepted now in the peer-reviewed literature. Alex, go to onlinehealthnow.com and get Spike Support, wellness company, best-in-class Spike Support, 2 capsules twice a day. That's going to be bolstered by curcumin, 500 milligrams twice a day, and bromelain, 500 milligrams a day. So 3 things. We call it base Spike Support. You can add nitric boost and so many products you have in your store to that. But again, base Spike Support is the wellness company Spike formula, 2 capsules twice a day, plus bromelain, 500 milligrams a day, plus curcumin, preferably the best kind, liposomal, 500 milligrams twice a day. That will come out. We're going to widely message this. This will be the answer to start getting rid of some of the spike protein in the body that the body can't break down itself. People are getting loaded with this stuff because the vaccine genetic code doesn't turn off.
And then what about the sloughing? I've read medical journals that say it does exist. Does it exist? How bad is it, the shedding?
Yeah, it does. Now, Alex, I've interviewed Helene Banoun, former research scientist at INSERM, one of the top institutes in France. She's in Marseille. Alex, is real. Shedding is real. People are getting shed on by spike protein. The women know this because it changes their periods. They feel sick. And we think probably a lot of extensive close contact, they may transfer the vaccine itself, certainly.
Well, I've seen a lot of liberal women that bought all the propaganda but didn't take the shot, but their boyfriend or husband did, and now they have just ruined periods.
It's true. There's a big project in the UK called the EVA Project, EVA. And about 3/4 of women actually experience shedding from another person from vaccinated where that changes their period. So it's real.
OnlineHealthNow.com, that's the wellness company. Tell people just briefly all the different great services that are there.
Wellness company has verticals of health education, nutraceuticals, and product. Lead product is Spike Support, the best in-class product that exists, all U.S. sourced, of the highest quality. Doctors have certified all of these. It has telemedicine, doctors on call by demand, community dentistry, community pharmacies. If people need treatment for COVID, they need ivermectin, hydroxychloroquine, they need exemptions from vaccines, go to onlinehealthnow.com and sign up. Monthly fee is less than $10. See a doctor is $60. They even have programs, Alex, where monthly fees, people can get unlimited health care.
And let's expand on this. The Google sends you to all the bad people on average, but there are a lot of good scientists and doctors and nurses and pharmacies. That's where you find it with Dr. Peter McCullough. And then we just build our movement of liberty, and we support the good doctors and nurses and pharmacies. It's a win-win. Healthcare without the propaganda. OnlineHealthNow.com. They're an amazing group and organization and sponsor of this show, OnlineHealthNow.com. Dr. Peter McCullough, thank you for your tireless work. Have a great weekend, and we'll talk to you soon.
Thank you.
And please send me all the guests you want on the show. I totally respect you and love you. Say hi to your wife. All right, I'm going to come back and introduce the next news and information. And then, as I told you, I'm back live tomorrow, noon Central. You don't want to miss that on Saturday.
When hope and love has been lost, and you fall to the ground, you must find a way. When the darkness descends, and you're told it's the end, you must find a way. When God decides to look the other way, and a clown takes the throne, we must find a way. You will find a way. Dig down and find faith. When you're close to the edge, with a gun to your head, you must find a way. We have entered the fray, and we will not obey. We must find a way and find faith. We won't let them divide. We will never abide.